Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good whatever time of the day it happens to be while you're watching. My name is Matt Doyle. I'm a UK-based author and occasional voice actor, and this is my Cabinet of Curios, the show where we look at horror media that I personally find to be a little bit unusual or obscure or perhaps just a little bit underrated, at least in terms of how it all performed here in the UK. Now, you may have noticed that I am not in my usual sitting down position. I am, in fact, standing up, and there is absolutely no reason for that. I just fancied a change, and so that's what you're getting. What you're also getting today is something a little bit different, because I'm not going to be focusing on one individual film or anything like that. I'm going to be looking at a specific type of creature that you maybe don't find in horror, or at least not pure horror as much as I think you should, and that is the dinosaur. Now, when it comes to monsters in horror, we often find our fear in the unfamiliar, the inhuman beasts that do not and never did exist, the surreal entities in every Lovecraftian pastiche ever written, including my own way back in the day. Then there are likes of Crawl, and to go back to the original blockbuster Jaws, which serve up plenty of fear-sensitive animals that we can see in our modern world. But the interesting thing is, while alligators and crocodiles have changed very little since the prehistoric days, the prehistoric creatures that we only see in museums have not had a huge place in pure horror for a very long time, at least in the mainstream. If we go all the way back to the 1950s, stop motion was all the rage as far as effects went. And by mixing models with live-action footage, filmmakers could not only capture the enormity of dinosaurs, but exaggerate them at will, with the likes of The Great Behemoth and The Beast from 20,000 Fathoms, which were B-movies, but I'd argue they did take themselves very seriously. They were designed to incite fear in the audience, and dinosaurs did continue to play the antagonist role for a little while afterwards. Fantasy and science fiction movies right up until the 1970s, with the likes of Planet Dinosaur, used these giant beasts that once inhabited our world as a way to create danger for our heroes, and in doing so, they injected elements of horror into their stories, though I'm not sure all of them intended that to be the outcome. Come the 1980s, though, dinosaurs moved more into the realms of children's fiction. The excellent franchises like The Land Before Time was, they were the standouts, and it wasn't really until the 1990s that we began to see them take some large steps back towards the realms of horror. And of course, with that, I'm talking about Jurassic Park. While it's not itself a horror movie, it does dabble with elements of horror. Scenes like the velociraptors in the kitchen or the encounter with the T-Rex were nightmare fuel for families, and that was all helped by the excellent special effects, which, it was very clear that we weren't looking at stop-motion monsters added in post-production. We were looking at something that was physically there with the actors and was very, very large, or we were in some sense. The film itself actually only contains 15 minutes of footage of dinosaurs on screen, 9 minutes of which is animatronics. The other 6 minutes was CG. It helped that the CG in the movie was certainly better than the attempts that had come before it. It certainly did not break the immersion quite as much as, for example, Species. But it's also worth noting that while not itself a horror, the source material for the movie, Michael Crichton's book of the same name, delved into even more moments that would fit within the genre. Now, if you wanted something less family-friendly, there was Roger Corman's Carnosaur. This was also toned down from the source material, albeit for budgetary restrictions. That was a book of the same name by Harry Adam Knight, and that was a B-movie gore fest that allegedly almost quadrupled its budget during its cinema run. Then, in the later end of the 90s, we got the survival horror video game Dino Crisis. And, Capcom, I know you aren't watching this, but I'm going to say it anyway. We need a remaster of these games. Stick Dino Crisis in the modern RE engine and send us dino hunting, you absolute cowards. Anyway, for a brief period, dinosaurs were once again carving out a niche in horror, even if mostly on a smaller scale. But as we left the early end of the 2000s, this changed. Dinosaurs had already become features in family entertainment, and steps into something more shocking became fewer and farther between for a good while. Those we did get tended to be more along the lines of Raptor Island, a sci-fi original movie complete with terrible CG. For the most part, especially in the mainstream, dinosaurs were back to being a way to insert some danger into family fantasy and sci-fi. From the 2010s onwards, we started to see more dinosaurs in horror again. There were some very low-budget affairs, though. They've changed a lot in style too. For the most part, if a film have the words Jurassic or Triassic in the title, you can all but guarantee a few things. First, the Dinosaurs probably won't be from the period mentioned, something that even Jurassic Park is guilty of. The second, the dinosaurs will likely be cheap CG that doesn't sit nicely against the live-action footage at all. And finally, there's also a good chance that the film will feel like every other modern B-movie. That doesn't mean they're necessarily bad, depending on what you're looking for. Films like Cowboys vs. Dinosaurs, which I think was later renamed Jurassic Hunt, and Dinosaur Hotel are far more serious than you'd expect based on their titles, though I'm still not sure we needed 2 sequels for the latter. Others, such as The Velocipastor and The Invisible Raptor, lean into comedy, like so many Sharknadoes and Sharktopusses that came before them. I would point to Tape 407 as being one that tries to do something a little different. That's a found footage style film about the survivors of a plane crash being pursued by dinosaurs. If you enjoy that type of film, it's pretty effective in places right up until the very end when you finally see the dinosaur. And then it becomes very, very cheap looking indeed. So, after that history lesson, what is the point I'm trying to make here? Well, I can't really get my head around why we don't see more straight horror movies about dinosaurs. Yes, you may need a ludicrous setup using bioengineering or undiscovered islands or cave systems to get the beasts in place to snack on some people, but that isn't any worse than some of the other horror plots we've had. And my guess is it comes down to a couple of different things. The first is that we tend to pigeonhole dinosaurs. Initially, they were kind of a Western kaiju. They were city destroyers and forces of nature that eventually transitioned into symbols of threat rather than pure horror antagonists. And then they became family movie creatures, ranging from momentary problems to outright protagonists. Now they're sort of back to their monster movie roots in the more mainstream releases, but the rules have changed. Instead of massive beasts, you're more likely to see some sort of variety of a raptor, and the threat is quicker and with less building smashing. While lower budget releases show that they can be used as pure antagonists, the big studios don't seem to have a taste for moving them away from their role in films with lower age ratings. I suspect budget also plays into it. As much as I enjoy some of the B-movie releases, I'm not going to claim the effects are particularly great. They certainly don't stand up against Jurassic Park, and if I'm being honest, I don't think a lot of them come out on top against the Carnosaur movies in that respect either. The effects certainly don't have the charm of the Harryhausen-style stop-motion. So unless it's a money spinner, you really aren't going to have the budget to do them all that well, not in a full-length movie. Could also maybe argue that there is some issue around accuracy. Some people put a lot of stock into this. You'll see videos online with things such as the kitchen scene from Jurassic Park with biologically accurate raptors, because our knowledge of how dinosaurs looked and behaved has changed over the years. I don't think it necessarily has to be a problem, but you're going to find some people will naturally kick up about that. But here's the thing. Not everybody is going to be making a 90 to 120 minute piece for a wide release. I know that there is a taste for dinosaur horror. I know this because it does exist. All over YouTube, you can find analog horror. And if you don't know, analog horror is an offshoot of found footage that utilizes low fidelity visuals designed to look like old analog recordings. And they often avoid jump scares in favor of cryptic messages and atmospheric touches. For a mainstream analog horror release, you could look at something like Skinamarink. If that tonally worked for you, analog horror on YouTube may be something that's worth you looking into. Dinosaurs have made a resurgence in this format with a number of series setting their stories within the Jurassic Park universe. These are things that are very niche. It's the same as there are a lot of Godzilla analog horrors. It seems to be built at the moment for large creatures and things like this, and possibly because of the low fidelity video, meaning that it covers a multitude of sins with the effects, and you can do things that look a little bit more, I suppose, in line with everything else that's on screen, which is a great help. So what that means is that dinosaurs definitely still scare some people. I do live in hope that we get a full-length dinosaur horror with a decent budget, but I'm doubtful we ever will, at least not anytime soon. Unless Jurassic Park Rebirth ends up being less of an action movie than I'm expecting. That doesn't mean we won't see it in other media, though. Looking at the new Jurassic Park video game that's coming, that looks very much like Alien Isolation, but dinosaurs. So again, there is a movement towards that across media. So I might be wrong. But what about yourselves? I want to hear what you think of the idea of dinosaurs in horror. Do you think they still are a viable movie monster for a pure horror movie without such a reliance on comedy or being more family friendly? Do you think that there's a good reason why we haven't seen it? Do you have a favourite dinosaur horror? Let me know in the comments below, because I would love to see more extinct predators in horror movies. So, until next time. Later. Hey. Do you like horror? Let's not be silly, of course you do. You're here, aren't you? So, if you like horror, and more specifically you like horror-themed events, there is one coming on the 29th of March, down here in England, in Canterbury, Kent. The indie horror chapter is putting on the Canterbury Horror Tales. This will run from 11 till 4:30. It is completely free to enter, and as you can see from the list of names on the poster on the other side of the video, there is going to be 40 authors there. That is 40, including me. I'm going to be selling and signing books. My main books will come with freebies. So, for example, Ilurus comes with the mini-zine that gives you information on the Ilurus project, and also on the back opens up into a poster which gives you hints as to how to find the 7 hidden passages, the Beast of Loveby Island. I'm going to be going a little bit Inception with it. You're going to get a free sticker of the page from the demon book within the book. I'm also going to be selling some other stickers, including some stuff with some very silly rock and metal crossovers with horror, including Ghostface and Ringu Starr, which I've held up the wrong way around, but that's okay. I'm going to be taking part in a live panel as well with a couple of other authors. We're going to be talking about creature horror. There's going to be other live panels and some readings going throughout the day. And again, it is completely free to enter the event. So please, if you love horror, come down. We would all love to see you there.